Alright, I've removed it from the lathe, and now I have to take the door off. Now the door is a little tough to pull off. Sometimes you have to pry it, you have to kind of work one end off and get the tape to release just a little bit at a time, but it just takes a little work. Once you get it off, you've got to remove the tape. So you can take a nice straight knife and scrape it off, and then use mineral spirits to take the residue off. It takes a little scraping, residue, get everything off, because you don't want this to stick when you're putting it in. It opens pretty good. It's still a little sticky, but I've gotten all the residue off, and it opens nice. Now what I'm going to do is put some sanding sealer on there to seal up the inside, kind of hopefully keep the wood movement down to a minimum. Now keep the pieces apart, put the sanding sealer on and let them dry. You don't want the pieces to stick together. Just cover the inside. That's all you got to worry about. Don't worry about the grooves or anything else, because you're going to be sanding them down anyway. I'm hoping the sanding sealer just keeps the movement of the wood down so that the inside moves the same as the outside. So good chance to dry. Alright, now I've checked the door. Normally I don't adjust it at this point, but it's still a little tight, and I want it to open good when I'm done, so I'm going to sand down the wings just a little bit, just to make sure that it opens easily once I put the next row on there. Alright, I put the insert in. I've made sure that I've got plenty of room for adjustment, make sure everything's open, make sure the release plate will exit through the doorway. I've lined up exactly where I want the insert to be. Sometimes I'll even make a mark so I know to set it down in the exact spot. Now using a thick or medium glue, put it around where the insert's going to sit in the vase and under the wings and the header. Be pretty generous down here, but make sure none of that glue can get up into the insert. And you set it down where you made your mark, and be sure to let it dry for a very long time. I recommend you let it dry at least overnight, because when you start spinning this thing around at 500 to 1000 RPM, you will be amazed at this glue that will get into areas you don't want it. In this case, magnet opens okay. I make sure that it can open from the outside. It's a little touchy. There it goes. It opens okay, but it's not quite as easy as I'd like it. Now sometimes I will add an additional little tiny magnet to the top of it just to give it a little more pulling power. This one works, but I want to add a little more pulling power to it. So what I do is I take a little 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch magnet. It'll stick right to there, but I always use a little glue, and that'll add a lot of pulling power to the outside. So using a gel glue so that there's no dripping, I'll put a little gel glue on and let the magnet hold itself into place. I use the gel glue to just make sure it doesn't fall off when it's spinning around while you're turning it. Alright, everything's dried. I'll put the door back into place, make sure it fits really well, and tape it secure so it's exactly where I want it. Make sure the seams line up as best as you can get it, because this is where, when you glue the next piece on, this is what will hold the door into place. And then next piece we're going to put on, this is the joiner plate. This is what connects the insert to the door. I'm going to glue it right in there. And with the joiner plate, you're going to use a thin glue on the bottom part because you want the plate to sit flat. You don't want any excessive glue, and you want to use just a small amount. You don't want it to get into the holes, get into the area. Then we're going to use a gel glue on the front and top because you don't want the glue to run down. You can't let it leak down underneath. And then in order to align it, once you set it in there and you're going to align it, there's a piece of plastic that's 3/8 of an inch or 3/16 of an inch. Just use that as an alignment against the arms so that it's parallel. Alright, enough practice. We're going to glue. Now take a couple drops of the thin glue. You don't need a whole lot of it. You don't want it squirting out or leaking into the wrong areas. And then use a very generous amount of gel glue on the front and the lip of your joiner plate. And I run it across the front and the lip. This is what's going to hold your door into place. Place it down, make sure it's flat. Make sure it sits flat. And then use your piece to make sure that it's parallel. Once you've got it into place, remove that plastic piece and let it dry for a long, long time. Alright, it dry. Took the tape off. It opens perfectly. Everything's nice and square and it comes out great. Now it's time to add a few of the stabilizer pieces. These will hold the door into place. There's one piece that matches your joiner plate. We're going to use that piece. We're going to take it approximately 1/2 inch below the height of the door. Cut that piece off. Just use any glue, thin glue or gel glue, it doesn't matter. I'm going to glue that piece right onto the joiner plate. And use an angle. Try to make sure that it's 90-degree angle because you want it straight up and down. And let it dry. Alright, it's nice and dry. It's time to add the top of the stabilizer. Now what we're going to do is take the diameter at that point all the way across the vase, and we need the distance from the wall to the stabilizer. Draw the diameter on a piece of paper. Take the distance from the wall to the stabilizer, add about 1/4 inch because you want a little play. You're going to sand it down when you get ready to. Draw this mark on there and cut that piece out. That's your template. We're going to place the template onto the piece of plastic, the remaining piece of plastic. Draw the curve on there, and that's the piece you cut. Any woodworking tools will cut plastic. I'll cut it down, I'll set it into place, and then use a magic marker to go underneath and mark where I need to cut it off. This will keep it nice, make it nice and even. Now, I generally use a sander to cut it down. I've taken it down, it's nice and smooth, nice and flat, perfectly flush with the area, but there's sharp corners that you can catch your finger on there, so I generally cut those corners down. It's all cut down, corners are off, fits perfectly flush, and it's time to glue it into place. Now I'm going to use a gel glue. You don't want any glue dripping down into the wrong areas, so you just use a gel glue when you don't want the glue to drip. Put a little along the top and a nice generous amount onto the stabilizer. And set it into place. Try to keep it 90 degrees. It just looks better. And let it dry for a long